The stars hung silent in the endless black of space as Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant. His gray eyes watched the viewing screen where something impossible was happening. A ship had just appeared out of nowhere, and it was like nothing humanity had ever seen before. The vessel was massive, at least 3 times the size of the Defiant. Its surface seemed to shimmer with colors that hurt to look at directly. Lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that made no sense to human eyes. Morrison had been in space for 20 years, and he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," said Captain Lisa Hayes from her station. She was younger than Morrison, with sharp features and quick hands that moved across her controls. "It's on multiple frequencies. They're trying to find one we can understand." Morrison nodded slowly. "Put it through." The screen flickered and changed. A creature appeared that made several crew members gasp. It stood upright like a human, but that was where the similarity ended. Its body was covered in a hard shell that gleamed like polished metal. Multiple eyes dotted its elongated head, and its mouth was a complex arrangement of moving parts. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in delicate fingers. "Greetings, primitive species," the creature said. The voice was translated somehow, coming through clear despite the alien mouth movements not matching the words. "I am Ambassador Kolvath of the Galactic Council. We have detected your expansion into this region of space. Your presence has been noted and catalogued." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. Something about the tone bothered him. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the human vessel Defiant. We're pleased to make first contact with an alien species. This is a historic moment for both our peoples." Kolvath's head tilted in a way that might have been confusion. "Historic is not the correct term. This is a standard integration protocol. We have performed this procedure 47,000 times across the galaxy. You are now required to submit your territorial claims for review by the Council. All colonies established in the past 200 cycles must be evacuated pending proper authorization." The bridge went quiet. Morrison looked at Hayes, who had gone pale. He turned back to the screen. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "Did you just tell us to abandon our colonies?" "Affirmative," Kolvath replied without hesitation. "Your species has been classified as Category 3 developing civilization. As per Galactic Council Regulation 47-9, all Category 3 species must submit to Council authority for a probationary period of 500 standard cycles. During this time, you will be assigned appropriate territories based on your population needs and technological capabilities. Your current colonies exceed the permitted zone for a species of your classification." Morrison felt heat rising in his chest. He had spent 3 years helping to establish the colony on New Montana. Good people lived there, families, children who had been born under an alien sun. And this creature was telling him they had to leave because of some rulebook written by beings humans had never met. "Ambassador Kolvath," Morrison said, keeping his voice level, "humanity doesn't recognize the authority of your council. We've established our colonies through our own effort and sacrifice. We're not leaving them." The alien's eyes seemed to focus more intently on Morrison. "You misunderstand the nature of this communication. This is not a negotiation. This is notification of Council policy. All spacefaring species fall under Council jurisdiction. Compliance is mandatory." "No," Morrison said simply. There was a long pause. Kolvath's head moved in what might have been agitation. Several of its arms gestured in complex patterns. "Your response is not logical. Perhaps translation difficulties are causing confusion. Let me clarify. The Galactic Council has maintained order in this galaxy for 200,000 of your years. We have integrated 17,000 species into our peaceful civilization. The alternative to integration is isolation and eventual extinction. You must negotiate the terms of your submission." Morrison looked around his bridge. Every eye was on him. These were people he trusted. People who had followed him across the stars. He saw anger in their faces and fear, but also determination. He turned back to the screen. "You're not hearing me, Ambassador. We don't negotiate our freedom. We don't negotiate our right to exist as an independent species. And we sure as hell don't negotiate whether our families get to keep their homes. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your ship and leave human space. You're not going to issue any more demands. And if the Council wants to talk to humanity, you're going to approach us as equals or not at all." Kolvath was silent for a long moment. Its eyes moved independently, looking at different parts of its own ship's interior. Finally, it spoke again. "This response is unprecedented in Council records. You refuse to even discuss terms of integration?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Morrison confirmed. This will be reported to the High Council, Kolvath said. They will determine appropriate response measures. Your refusal has been documented. You do that, Morrison replied. And you tell your High Council something from me. Tell them humanity didn't claw its way up from caves and cross the stars just to bow down to the first aliens we meet. We've been fighting for our freedom since before we invented the wheel. We're not going to stop now. The screen went dark. The alien ship hung in space for several more minutes, its lights pulsing in what might have been communication with distant authorities. Then, without warning, it simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only a faint distortion in space where it had been. The bridge erupted in noise. Crew members talking over each other, some excited, some worried. Hayes moved to Morrison's side. "Sir, what just happened?" she asked quietly. Morrison rubbed his face with both hands. "I think we just told the entire galaxy to go to hell, Lisa. Was that wise?" she asked. He looked at her directly. Was it wise? Probably not. Was it right? Absolutely. You heard that thing. 500 cycles of probation. That's 500 years near as I can figure their time scale. They wanted us to abandon our colonies and beg for permission to exist. What would you have done? Hayes nodded slowly. The same thing you did, sir. But what happens now? Now we report this to Earth and prepare for whatever comes next, Morrison said. He raised his voice to address the whole bridge. Listen up, everyone. What just happened here is going to change everything. We made first contact with an alien civilization, and it didn't go the way anyone hoped. But we did the right thing. We stood our ground. Now we need to make sure we can keep standing. Hayes, send a priority message to Fleet Command. Include everything, full recording of the conversation. Then plot a course back to New Montana. If the Council is coming back, that colony is going to be their first target. The crew moved quickly, each person focused on their tasks. Morrison sat down in his command chair and stared at the empty space where the alien ship had been. Somewhere out there was an entire galactic civilization that thought humanity should submit to their authority. They had probably never been told no before. They were used to species accepting their terms, grateful to be part of their grand civilization. But humanity was different. Humans had a long history of rejecting authority they didn't choose. They had fought wars against empires, overthrown kings, and died by the millions for the simple idea that people should be free to govern themselves. That wasn't going to change just because the empire in question came from the stars instead of across an ocean. Morrison knew he had just started something that could end in disaster. The Council clearly had technology beyond anything humanity possessed. They had been traveling between stars while humans were still learning to make fire. They could probably destroy every human colony without breaking a sweat. But they could also probably be beaten. Not with technology, not yet, but with something else, with will. With the simple, stubborn refusal to kneel, Morrison had read his history. He knew that empires, no matter how powerful, could be resisted. Sometimes that resistance failed. Sometimes it succeeded, but it always mattered. Message transmitted, sir, Hayes reported. Earth will have it in 6 hours. Good, Morrison said. Now we wait and see what happens next. Deep in space, the Council ship reappeared thousands of light years away. Ambassador Kolvath stood in a chamber facing a holographic projection of High Counselor Thren, the supreme leader of the Galactic Council. Thren was another species entirely. Vaguely humanoid, but made of what looked like living crystal that pulsed with inner light. They refused? Thren asked, its voice resonating like bells. Completely, Kolvath confirmed. They would not even discuss terms. The human leader stated they do not negotiate their freedom. Fascinating, Thren said, and troubling. In 200,000 years, no species has ever refused initial integration protocols. What are your orders, High Counselor? Kolvath asked. Thren was quiet for a long moment, light pulsing slowly through its crystalline form. We will try again. Perhaps this was merely one stubborn individual. Send diplomatic missions to 3 other human colonies. Approach them separately. Surely reasonable members of their species will see the benefits of Council membership. And if they all refuse? Kolvath asked. The chamber at the heart of Velshara was a marvel of architecture that predated most civilizations in the galaxy. Walls of pure energy contained an atmosphere comfortable to hundreds of different species. Floating platforms held the representatives of the Galactic Council, each one chosen from species that had joined the great civilization over millennia. High Counselor Thren stood at the center, its crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns across the chamber. Around it, counselors from dozens of worlds waited in tense silence. This emergency session had been called after something unprecedented had occurred. The humans had refused them, not once but 4 times. "Let us review the situation clearly," Thren said, its voice carrying to every corner of the massive space. "We have now attempted first contact protocols with 4 separate human colonies. The results have been identical in each case. Complete refusal to negotiate. Complete rejection of council authority. This has never happened in recorded history." A large reptilian creature raised one clawed hand. Military Commander Zeknor was from a warrior species that had submitted to the council after a brief war 15,000 years ago. His kind had learned to respect council power the hard way. "High Counselor, the solution is obvious. We send a battle fleet. We demonstrate our strength. They will negotiate then." Another counselor spoke up, this one a being of pure thought given form through technology. Counselor Miraeth's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Violence should be our last option, not our first. We do not yet understand these humans. Perhaps if we study them more carefully we can find the correct approach." "Study them?" Zeknor growled. "They are primitives who have barely achieved faster than light travel. What is there to study? They are behaving irrationally. Irrational behavior is corrected through demonstration of superior force." Thren raised one crystalline hand for silence. "We have one human currently in our custody. Dr. Henry Clark was on a research vessel we intercepted near human space. He has been treated as a guest, not a prisoner. Perhaps he can provide insight into his species' behavior. Bring him to the chamber." Minutes later, Dr. Henry Clark was escorted into the chamber. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been held by the council for 3 weeks now, treated well but unable to leave or contact his own people. As he entered the massive chamber and saw the assembled aliens, his eyes went wide. He had never imagined such a gathering was possible. "Dr. Clark," Thren said gently, "thank you for joining us. We have questions about your species. Your leaders have rejected our offer to join the Galactic Council. Can you explain why?" Henry looked around nervously. These beings could destroy humanity without effort. He knew that. But he also knew his people. He took a deep breath. "Have you ever read human history, Counselor?" "We have reviewed your planetary records," Thren confirmed. "Your species has a violent past. Many wars, much conflict. This is common among young species. It is one reason council guidance is beneficial." Henry shook his head. "It's not just violence. It's what we fight about. Humans have this idea, this concept that's deeper than almost anything else in our culture. We call it freedom. The right to govern ourselves. The right to make our own choices. We fought wars over it. Died by the millions for it. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen based on it." Zeknor snorted. "All species value autonomy before they understand the benefits of order. This is not unique." "No, you don't understand," Henry said, his voice growing stronger. "It's not that we value autonomy. It's that we can't exist without it. There are stories in our history of people who chose death over submission, not because submission would kill them, but because living without freedom wasn't really living at all. When you approached us and demanded we submit to your authority, you were asking us to give up the one thing we can't give up." Miraeth's presence seemed to focus on Henry. "Interesting. So when we offered them a place in our civilization, they heard it as a demand for surrender?" "Exactly," Henry confirmed. "You have to understand. Earth has a history of empires. Big, powerful empires that conquered smaller peoples and told them it was for their own good. That they were bringing civilization and order. And you know what? Sometimes they were right. Sometimes those empires did make life better for some people, but humans still fought them, still rebelled, still died resisting them, because the principle mattered more than the practical benefits." The chamber was silent. Many counselors looked confused. Thren's light pulsed slowly. "This is difficult to comprehend. The council offers protection, technology, knowledge. We offer membership in a civilization that spans the galaxy. And your species refuses this because of a principle?" "Yes," Henry said simply. "And here's the thing you need to understand. It doesn't matter if you're right. It doesn't matter if joining the council would make human lives better. What matters is that you approached us as superiors talking to inferiors. You told us what we had to do instead of asking us what we wanted to do. The moment you did that, you lost any chance of humans saying yes." Zeknor slammed a fist against his platform. This is foolishness. They are one species. We are 17,000. They have 12 colonies. We have millions of worlds. They cannot refuse us. But they are refusing you, Miraeth pointed out. The question is what we do about it. Thren was quiet for a long time. Finally it spoke. Dr. Clark, if we approached your people differently, would they be willing to discuss cooperation? Henry considered this carefully. Maybe, but you would have to approach us as equals, not as primitives who need guidance, not as children who need to be taught. As equals who have something to offer, as well as something to learn. And you would have to accept that we might say no, really accept it, not just pretend to accept it while planning to force us later. Impossible, Zeknor said. They are Category 3. They do not have the technology or knowledge to be equals. Then you will never have peace with humanity, Henry said quietly. Because we would rather fight a war we can't win than accept peace as inferiors. The chamber erupted in discussion. Counselors argued among themselves. Some thought Henry was lying or exaggerating. Others were intrigued by this strange species. Still others agreed with Zeknor that force was the only answer. Thren let them argue for a while before calling for silence again. We will table the question of approach for now. Dr. Clark, can you tell us more about human military capabilities? If conflict becomes unavoidable, we must understand what we face. Henry felt a chill run down his spine. I'm not a military expert, counselor. I'm a xenobiologist. But I can tell you this. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very, very good at war. And when humans fight, we don't fight fair. We fight to win. All species fight to win, Zeknor said dismissively. No, Henry said. You don't understand. When I say humans fight to win, I mean we will use any tactic, any strategy, any weapon we can imagine. We will fight from places you don't expect. We will use methods you've never seen. And we will keep fighting long after a logical species would surrender. There are battles in human history where armies fought until every single soldier was dead, not because they had any hope of winning, but because they refused to surrender. Miraeth's presence focused intently on Henry. As a telepathic species, Miraeth could sense emotions even without reading thoughts. What she felt from this human was not fear or bravado. It was simple truth. He believed every word he was saying. High Counselor, Miraeth said slowly, I request permission to perform a deep scan of this human's emotional patterns. With his consent, of course. Henry looked nervous but nodded. If it helps prevent a war, go ahead. Miraeth's consciousness reached out, not reading Henry's thoughts but sensing the emotional landscape of his mind. What she found shocked her. Deep in the human's psyche was a pattern she had never encountered before. A fundamental, unshakable belief that freedom was worth any price. It wasn't logical. It wasn't calculated. It was simply there, as basic to his identity as breathing. She withdrew and addressed the council. This human speaks truth. I have sensed his emotional core. The attachment to independence is not cultural conditioning that can be changed. It is fundamental to their psychology. They literally cannot conceive of voluntarily surrendering their autonomy. Attempting to force them would be like trying to force a being to not feel pain. The reaction would be involuntary and absolute. Thren's light pulsed rapidly, a sign of agitation. Are you saying an entire species is psychologically incapable of accepting our standard integration protocols? That is exactly what I am saying, Miraeth confirmed. The chamber fell silent. For 200,000 years, the Galactic Council had operated on certain assumptions. One of those assumptions was that all species, once they understood the benefits of council membership, would choose to join. Some might resist initially, but all eventually saw reason. The council had never encountered a species that was fundamentally unable to accept their authority. Zeknor broke the silence. Then we must use force. If they cannot accept reason, we must impose order. And if we do, Miraeth asked, based on what I sensed from this human, force would only guarantee endless resistance. We would not be gaining a... The colony of New Montana hung like a jewel against the darkness of space. 3 million humans called it home, living in domed cities and underground habitats across a planet that almost, but not quite, matched Earth. Governor Paul Jenkins stood in the command center watching the sensors with growing concern. How many did you say? He asked quietly. The sensor technician swallowed hard. 500 ships, Governor. Maybe more. They're still entering the system. Paul had been a soldier before becoming governor. He knew what 500 ships meant. It meant overwhelming force. It meant the Council was done talking and ready to demonstrate their power. He also knew that New Montana's defenses consisted of a few orbital platforms and a handful of patrol ships. "Get me Admiral Morrison," he said. Minutes later, Morrison's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked tired but determined. "I see them too, Paul. We're already en route."
"The entire defense fleet is coming. How many ships do we have?"
Paul asked, though he already knew the answer. 80, Morrison said. "We can have them in position around New Montana in 6 hours." "It's not enough, Paul, not even close. Are we evacuating?" Paul asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. "That's your call as governor. But I'll tell you what I think. If we evacuate, we lose New Montana. The Council will claim it and we'll never get it back. If we stay, we might lose anyway, but at least we'll lose fighting." Paul looked out at the colony below. 3 million people, families, children going to school, farmers working the land, engineers building something new, all of them trusting him to make the right choice. "We stay," he said. "But we need to give people the option to leave. Anyone who wants to evacuate can do so. But I'm staying. This is our home." Morrison nodded slowly. "Understood. We'll be there soon, and Paul, whatever happens, we stood our ground. That matters." The next 6 hours were chaos. Emergency broadcast went out across New Montana. Civilian ships began launching, carrying those who chose to leave. But for every ship that departed, 10 times as many people chose to stay. They had built this colony with their own hands. They weren't leaving without a fight. When the human defense fleet arrived, it was led by the Defiant. Morrison watched as his ships took up position around the planet. 80 vessels against 500. On paper, it wasn't even a fight. But Morrison had learned something during his years in space. Numbers weren't everything. Captain Lisa Hayes stood beside him on the bridge. "Sir, the Council fleet is moving. They're forming a perimeter around the planet." Morrison nodded. "They're trying to bottle us in. Show us we're surrounded. Let them. All ships hold position. Do not fire unless fired upon, but keep weapons charged and shields up." The Council fleet moved with precision. 500 ships of various designs and sizes, all of them more advanced than anything humanity had built. They formed a sphere around New Montana, cutting off all routes of escape. It was a textbook blockade executed perfectly. From the flagship of the Council fleet, Commander Zeknor watched with satisfaction. The humans were trapped. Now they would see reason. He opened a channel to the planet below. "Attention, human colony of New Montana. This is Commander Zeknor of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are surrounded by 500 warships. Your defensive fleet is outnumbered and outgunned. We do not wish for violence. Agree to negotiate the terms of your integration into the Council, and no blood will be shed." Governor Paul Jenkins took a deep breath and opened his own channel. His voice was broadcast not just to the Council fleet, but to every ship and every home in the colony. "Commander Zeknor, this is Governor Paul Jenkins. I want to make something very clear to you and to your Council. New Montana is a human colony. It was built by human hands. The people here chose to come across the stars to make a new home. We didn't ask your permission. We don't need your permission. And we're not leaving." Zeknor's voice carried a note of frustration. "You are being irrational. Look at your sensors. You cannot win this confrontation." "You're right," Paul said calmly. "We probably can't. But here's something you need to understand about humans. We don't just fight battles we can win. Sometimes we fight battles we can't win because the principle is worth dying for. My great-great-grandfather fought in a war on Earth. His side was outnumbered 10-1. They lost. Most of them died. But they fought anyway because they believed in freedom. And you know what? Eventually their side won anyway. Maybe not them personally, but the cause they fought for lived on." There was silence from the Council fleet. Zeknor had studied many species. He had fought in several integration conflicts, but he had never heard a leader openly admit they would lose and still refuse to surrender. Admiral Morrison opened his own channel. "Commander Zeknor, let me add something to what the governor said. You've got 500 ships. We've got 80. You can probably destroy us. But here's what happens if you do. You prove to every human in every colony that the Council is not a peaceful civilization. You prove we were right to refuse you, and then you'll have to deal with 12 colonies full of people who know you murdered 3 million of their own. You think we're stubborn now? You haven't seen anything yet." On the Council flagship, Zeknor felt his confidence wavering. This wasn't following the script. Species surrounded by overwhelming force were supposed to become reasonable. They were supposed to see that resistance was futile and agree to negotiate. These humans were doing the opposite. You would sacrifice 3 million lives for pride? Zeknor asked. Not for pride, Morrison replied. For freedom. There's a difference. Pride is ego. Freedom is the right to exist on our own terms. And yes, humans have died for that. Billions of us throughout our history. We'll die for it again if we have to. 3 weeks passed. The Council fleet maintained its blockade. The human fleet held its position. Neither side fired a shot, but the tension was crushing. For the people of New Montana, life continued in a strange state of suspended normalcy. Children still went to school, though the teachers struggled to explain why alien warships surrounded their planet. Farmers still tended crops, though they could see the Council vessels glinting in the sky. People went to work, came home, tried to maintain normal routines while living under threat of annihilation. But something else was happening too. Something the Council hadn't anticipated. The blockade had cut off normal supply routes, so human ships began running the blockade. Small, fast vessels would dart in from unexpected angles, slip through gaps in the Council perimeter, and deliver supplies to the planet. The first time it happened, Zeknor ordered his ships to intercept, but the human vessel was small and maneuverable. It dodged between Council ships, used their own formations against them, and made it to the planet before anyone could stop it. The second time, Zeknor ordered warning shots. But the human pilot ignored them, weaving through fire like it was a game. Again, the ship reached New Montana safely. By the 10th supply run, Zeknor realized he had a problem. The humans weren't intimidated by his fleet. If anything, they treated it as a challenge. Pilots were volunteering to run the blockade, competing to see who could get through fastest. Lieutenant Mike Torres was one of those pilots. At 25, he was young for a supply runner, but he was good. Really good. His ship, a modified freighter called the Lucky Star, had made 7 successful runs through the blockade. On his 8th run, he found himself facing a Council patrol cruiser that had learned his tricks. The alien ship positioned itself perfectly, cutting off his usual approach. Mike grinned and opened a channel. Nice positioning, he said, but you're forgetting something. What? The Council pilot responded, confused. Humans don't follow predictable flight plans. We improvise. Mike cut the engines and let his ship drift using momentum and small thruster bursts to slide sideways through space. The Council ship moved to intercept, but Mike had already changed direction again, firing his main engines at an angle that sent him tumbling toward the planet. It looked uncontrolled, chaotic, but Mike knew exactly what he was doing. The Council pilot tried to follow but lost track of the human ship in the confusing maneuvers. By the time they reacquired the target, Mike was already entering New Montana's atmosphere, whooping with joy. Lucky Star to command. He broadcast. Successful delivery. These aliens fly like they're following a manual. We fly like we're making it up as we go. Because we are. Back on the Council flagship, Zeknor was seething. How are they doing this? We have superior technology, superior numbers, superior training. How are these primitive ships getting through? His tactical officer, a being from a species known for logical thinking, spoke carefully. Commander, I believe I understand the problem. We fight the way we were trained. We follow established tactical doctrine. The humans have no doctrine. Every ship does something different. Every pilot makes decisions that make no tactical sense. But somehow it works. Zeknor pulled up recordings of the human supply runs. He watched ships do things that should be impossible, burning engines at angles that wasted fuel, flying in patterns that left them vulnerable, making choices that no rational pilot would make. And yet more often than not they succeeded. They're insane, Zeknor muttered. The chambers on Velshara were darker than usual. High Counselor Thren had dimmed the lighting, a sign of deep contemplation among its species. Around the central platform, the Council members waited in uncomfortable silence. The stalemate at New Montana had lasted a month now, and it was becoming a crisis. We must discuss the human situation openly, Thren said finally. Commander Zeknor, report. Zeknor's reptilian features were tight with frustration. The blockade holds, High Counselor, but it is not having the desired effect. The humans continue to resist. They run supply vessels through our lines with disturbing success. Morale among our fleet is declining. Many captains are confused why we have not simply destroyed the human fleet and ended this. And why have we not? Asked another counselor. A being of flowing liquid contained in a transparent suit. Because that would make us conquerors, not peacekeepers, Thren replied. The Council has not survived 200,000 years by mindlessly destroying those who resist us. We offer civilization, not tyranny. Then perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. Counselor Mira Eth's voice resonated through the chamber. I have been studying the human psychology extensively through Dr. Clark. I believe I understand the root of our problem. Explain, Thren said. Mira Eth's presence seemed to expand, filling more of the chamber. The Council has always seen itself as benevolent. We bring peace, technology, protection. We genuinely believe we improve the lives of species who join us, and in most cases we do. But we have never considered how this appears to the species being integrated. To them, we are not benefactors. We are an empire that demands submission and calls it cooperation. But we are not an empire, Zeknor protested. We are a democratic council. We give member species representation and rights. After they submit to our authority, Mira Eth countered. Do you not see? We demand surrender first, then offer benefits. To a species like humanity, which values independence above all else, this is backwards. They will never submit to receive benefits. They would rather die free than live as subjects, no matter how well treated. The chamber fell silent. This was a disturbing thought. The Council had never considered itself as the aggressor. They were the civilized galaxy bringing order to chaos. But what if species didn't see it that way? Dr. Clark could explain this better than I can, Mira Eth said. With your permission, High Counselor, I would like to bring him before the full council again. Not as a prisoner or guest, but as a voice representing his species. Thren considered this. Very well. Bring him. When Henry Clark entered the chamber this time, he looked different. A month in council custody had changed him. He was thinner, more tired. But his eyes were sharp. He had spent every day studying the council, learning about them, trying to understand them. Because he knew that understanding might be the only way to prevent a war. Dr. Clark, Thren said, its crystalline voice echoing. Counselor Mira Eth believes you can help us understand your species better. We are genuinely confused. We offer your people peace and prosperity. They refuse. Why? Henry took a deep breath. High Counselor, can I tell you a story from Earth's history? Proceed, Thren said. 200 years ago, there was a nation on Earth called Britain. It was powerful, wealthy, technologically advanced. It controlled colonies across the planet. One of those colonies was in North America. Britain genuinely believed it was helping these colonies. It protected them, traded with them, gave them access to British technology and civilization. And Britain was right. Life in those colonies was better in many ways than it had been before. Henry paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. But then Britain tried to impose more control. It demanded taxes without representation. It tried to tell the colonists how to live, what rules to follow, and the colonists rebelled. They fought a war against the most powerful military on the planet at that time. They had no chance of winning, not really. Britain could have crushed them. But the colonists refused to surrender. And eventually, through sheer stubborn determination, they won. They created a new nation based on the principle that people should govern themselves. What is your point? Zeknor asked. My point is that humans don't care about practical benefits, Henry said. We care about principles. Britain was offering us a better life, but we wanted the freedom to choose our own lives, even if we made them worse. That's the difference. You're offering us the galaxy. We're saying we'd rather have the stars we can reach ourselves, even if it takes longer and costs more. Thren's light pulsed slowly. But this is irrational. Freedom without the tools and knowledge to use it properly is worthless. Is it? Henry asked quietly. Let me ask you something, High Counselor. In 200,000 years, how many truly new ideas has the Council developed? How much have you innovated? There was uncomfortable silence. Thren finally spoke. We are efficient. We apply existing knowledge effectively. Because you're static, Henry said. You've created perfect order. And in that perfect order, nothing really changes. You've had the same system for 200,000 years. That's stability, yes. But it's also stagnation. Humans might be chaotic and irrational, but we're also creative and dynamic. We make mistakes, but we also make breakthroughs. In the 1,000 years we've had advanced civilization, we've gone from horses to starships. How long did it take you? Miraeth's presence focused intently on Henry. She could sense he was speaking from genuine belief, not trying to manipulate. You're saying that human chaos is valuable? I'm saying it's who we are, Henry replied. You can't separate human innovation from human independence. We create new things because we refuse to accept that the old ways are the only ways. If you force us into your system, you'll lose that. We'll become just another member species following your rules, thinking inside your boxes. Is that really what you want? Thren was quiet for a long time. When it finally spoke, its voice was thoughtful. What would you suggest, Dr. Clark? We cannot simply ignore your expansion into the galaxy. We cannot allow uncontrolled chaos. The Council maintains order. That is our purpose. Then talk to us as equals, Henry said, not as primitives who need guidance. Come to us with offers, not demands. Let us choose to work with you instead of forcing us to submit. You might be surprised what happens. And if we do this, Zeknor asked, what guarantee do we have that humans will not become a threat? Your history is violent. Your nature is chaotic. Without Council oversight, you could destabilize the entire region. Henry smiled sadly. You have no guarantees. That's the risk of treating someone as an equal. But consider the alternative. If you force us, we'll fight. Maybe we'll lose. Probably we'll lose. But we'll damage you in the process. And even if you win, you'll spend centuries dealing with human resistance. Every colony will be a battlefield. Every generation will harbor hatred for the Council. Is that worth it? Miraeth spoke up. High Counselor, I would like to try something. Dr. Clark has given me an idea. May I have permission to make contact with Admiral Morrison? Privately, through secure channels. Thren's light flickered with surprise. For what purpose? To propose something that has never been tried before, Miraeth said. What if, instead of humans joining the Council, we offered them an alliance? A partnership between equals. They maintain their independence. We maintain our security. Both sides benefit without either side surrendering. Impossible, Zeknor said immediately. The Council does not make alliances. We integrate species into our structure. That is how order is maintained. And how has that been working with the humans? Miraeth asked pointedly. Zeknor had no answer to that. Thren considered carefully. This was unprecedented. The Council had existed for 200,000 years with one basic approach: integration, assimilation, unity through order. But Miraeth was right. That approach had failed completely with humanity. Very well, Thren said finally. Counselor Miraeth, you have permission to make contact with the human admiral. Explore the possibility of an alternative arrangement. But be clear, this is exploratory only. The Council must approve any final agreement. Miraeth bowed her presence in acknowledgement. Understood, High Counselor. 3 days later, Admiral Jack Morrison sat in his quarters on the Defiant, staring at his communication console. The message had been unexpected. A private channel, highly encrypted, from a Council member who wanted to talk. Not negotiate surrender. Just talk. He had debated ignoring it. It could be a trap. But something in the message's tone suggested otherwise. Against his better judgment, he had accepted the channel. The being that appeared on his screen was unlike anything he had seen before. Counselor Miraeth had no physical form, or at least not one visible to humans. Instead, she appeared as a shimmer in the air, a presence more than a body. Admiral Morrison, Miraeth said, thank you for accepting my contact. I know you have no reason to trust the Council, but I hope you will hear what I have to say. I'm listening, Morrison said cautiously. I believe the Council has made a fundamental error in its approach to humanity, Miraeth said. We have treated you as a primitive species that needs guidance. This was wrong. I have studied your people through Dr. Clark. I have sensed the depth of your commitment to independence. And the neutral space station had been constructed specifically for this purpose. Built in the empty space between human territory and Council space, it was designed to be neutral ground where neither side held advantage. The station was a marvel of combined engineering, using both human and Council technology in its construction. Ambassador Sarah Blake stood at the viewing port watching ships arrive. She was 40 years old, a career diplomat who had spent her life negotiating between nations on Earth. Now she found herself negotiating humanity's place in a galaxy full of civilizations that had existed longer than human recorded history. Behind her stood Admiral Jack Morrison and Dr. Henry Clark. Morrison was there as military advisor, Clark as cultural liaison. But Sarah was the lead negotiator. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. Nervous? Morrison asked quietly. Terrified, Sarah admitted. But I'm good at hiding it. You'll do fine, Henry said. Just remember what I told you. Don't let them frame this as them granting us privileges. We're offering them something too. A partnership with a species that thinks differently than any they've encountered. And if they try to push for submission anyway? Sarah asked. Morrison's voice was hard. Then we walk away. We've proven we can resist them. We can keep resisting. But I don't think it will come to that. Mira Eth seemed genuine. The doors opened, and council representatives entered. High Counselor Thren led them, its crystalline form glowing softly. Beside it floated Mira Eth's presence. Behind them came representatives from a dozen council species, each one chosen for their diplomatic skill. Notably absent was Commander Zeknor. Sarah suspected that was intentional. Ambassador Blake, Thren said, its voice carrying warmth. Welcome to this station. We hope it serves as a symbol of what might be built between our peoples. Sarah stepped forward and extended her hand. After a moment's confusion, Thren extended one crystalline appendage. The handshake was awkward but sincere. High Counselor Thren, Sarah said. Thank you for agreeing to meet us this way, as equals. The word equals is interesting, Thren said as they moved to the negotiating chamber. It implies parity. Yet by most measures the Council far exceeds humanity in technology, knowledge, and power. How do you define equality in such circumstances? Sarah had prepared for this question. Equality isn't about identical capabilities, High Counselor. It's about mutual respect and mutual benefit. Yes, you have advantages in technology, but we have advantages too. Fresh perspectives, different approaches, novel solutions. An equal partnership means both sides bring something valuable to the table. They entered the chamber, a circular room with comfortable seating arranged to ensure no one sat in a position of dominance. As they settled in, Sarah noticed that the council representatives seemed genuinely curious rather than dismissive. Let us speak plainly, Thren said. The council has existed for 200,000 years with a single approach to integrating new species. You have forced us to question that approach. This is uncomfortable for many council members, but I personally believe discomfort is a sign of necessary growth. We haven't tried to force anything, Sarah said carefully. We simply refuse to be forced ourselves. There's a difference. Mireth's presence pulsed with what might have been approval. Indeed, and that is why we are here. Ambassador Blake, what would humanity want from a partnership with the Council? Please be specific. Sarah pulled up a holographic display. She had spent weeks preparing this presentation with input from scientists, military leaders, and government officials across human space. We want several things, she began. First, access to Council databases, on stellar cartography, safe navigation routes, and known hazards. We're exploring blind right now. Information could save lives. Reasonable, Thren said. Continue. Second, limited technology exchange. Not everything at once because frankly we need to learn at our own pace. But specific technologies that would improve human life, medical advances, environmental systems, power generation. Also reasonable, Thren said. These are things we grant to new member species. What do you offer in return? Sarah smiled. This was the important part. We offer something the Council hasn't had in a very long time. We offer change, innovation, new ways of thinking. Dr. Clark has studied your civilization. It's stable, yes, but it's also static. When was the last time a Council species developed something truly revolutionary? Something that changed how you operate? The Council representatives looked at each other. Several seemed uncomfortable with the question. You make it sound like stability is a weakness, one counselor said, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish. Not a weakness, Sarah said, but a limitation. Humans are chaotic. We make mistakes. We try things that fail, but we also innovate constantly. In the 1,000 years since we developed industry, we've transformed our world a dozen times over. We've gone from sailing ships to starships. We've split the atom and mapped our own genome. We did all of that because we never accepted that things were good enough. We always pushed for more. And nearly destroyed your planet in the process, another counselor pointed out. True, Sarah admitted. We've made terrible mistakes, but we learned from them. That's the point. We fail and learn and try again. Your approach avoids mistakes by following proven methods. Ours embraces mistakes as part of progress. Imagine what could happen if we combined both approaches. Council wisdom with human innovation. Henry spoke up for the first time. I've spent months studying the Council. You've achieved incredible things. You've maintained peace across millions of worlds. But I noticed something. Most of your major technological advances happened in your first 50,000 years. The last 150,000 have been mostly refinement and application. You've perfected what you know, but you've stopped discovering new things. The chamber was very quiet. This was clearly an uncomfortable truth. Thren's light pulsed slowly. You are not wrong, Dr. Clark. The Council has become, as you say, static, but this has been intentional. Rapid change causes instability. We chose stability. And maybe that was right for you, Sarah said. But humans can't exist that way. We need to grow and change. We'll do it anyway, whether you work with us or not. The question is whether we do it as allies or as separate civilizations that might eventually come into conflict. Admiral Morrison added his voice. From a military perspective, consider this. You've surrounded New Montana with 500 ships for over a month. Have you destroyed us? No. Have you stopped us? Not really. Our supply runs still get through. Our people still resist. Now imagine if instead of blockading us, you had us as allies. Human tactical thinking combined with Council technology. We approach problems differently than you do. That difference has value. Another counselor, this one resembling a tree made of living metal, spoke up. But what guarantee do we have that humans will not become a threat? Your species is aggressive. Your history is violent. If we give you access to our technology and trade networks, how do we know you will not eventually turn against us? Sarah had expected this question too. You don't have guarantees. That's what trust means. But consider the alternative. If you force us into submission, you create guaranteed enemies. Every human will grow up knowing the Council destroyed their freedom. We'll hate you forever. But if you work with us as partners, we'll have a reason to remain friendly. We'll benefit from cooperation, and humans are actually very loyal to those who respect us. She's right, Henry added. Human history is full of alliances that lasted centuries because both sides benefited and neither side tried to dominate the other. Yes, we're aggressive when threatened, but we're also capable of incredible friendship and loyalty when treated as equals. Thren was silent for a long time. The other Council representatives waited for their leader's decision. Finally, Thren spoke. I believe we should attempt this experiment, not because I am certain it will succeed, but because the alternative has clearly failed. Ambassador Blake, I propose the following. A treaty of alliance between humanity and the Galactic Council. You maintain complete sovereignty over your colonies and governance. We provide access to Council databases, limited technology exchanges, and protection from external threats. In return, you share your innovations with the Council and participate in joint research projects. We learn from each other. Sarah felt her heart race. This was actually happening. That sounds like an excellent foundation, High Counselor. But we'll need specific terms. What does limited technology exchange mean? What constitutes external threats? What are the mechanisms for joint research? Indeed, Thren said. This will require extensive negotiation. Months, perhaps years. But I believe we have found the correct path. Are you prepared to work through these details? Absolutely, Sarah said. Over the next 6 months, the negotiations continued. There were disagreements. There were moments of frustration on both sides. The Council struggled to accept that humans would not defer to their experience. Humans struggled to accept that they couldn't have everything immediately. But slowly, piece by piece, a treaty took shape. The Treaty of New Montana, as it came to be called, was unlike anything in galactic history. It established humanity as an independent partner to the Council, rather than a member species. Humans gained access to Council star charts, medical databases, and selected technolo.